Welcome once again, everyone, to Geekfest Rants. This is episode 16, which is part 2 of our collecting special. We've already heard on a previous episode how our collections got started. So please join us once again, Steve Ivona and myself, as we continue to discuss the topic of collecting, and we move into our current collections in terms of how they work, what rules we have, and where we kind of see them going in the future. Let's talk about now.
Okay.
We've gone through college in terms of the type of things we were collecting that kind of stayed with us, more or less.
Sure.
But what is it that you're focused on nowadays?
Okay, well, as I said, I still read comics, but I don't collect the physical copies anymore. Again, I went to a period where it was, once I was married for a few years and space was at a premium, and I realized that, you know, what was I going to do with all these things? I'm not going to live forever. I don't have children to hand them down to. So I decided to start selling them off. And I sold off probably about 2/3 of my comics and used the money to feed other habits, which seems to be my pattern. You know, because I was able to, with the comics, I was able to, and this comes back to the obsessive-compulsive aspect of the whole thing. With the comics, I was able to justify getting rid of them and selling them because I had them all digitally.
Okay.
They started coming out in digital formats, and I was able to get my hands on not only comics that I ever owned in my life, but almost all the comics that Marvel and DC ever published. And I said to myself, well, if I have them on a hard drive or a CD or a DVD, then I don't need them. I don't need them taking up space. So I decided that it was time to. I sold a lot, but I also kept a lot. I kept the ones that had some sort of sentimental value, right, and stuff that was, my favorite heroes and that kind of thing. But what I'm focused on now is really two things. One is a seasonal thing, and one is a year-round thing. And it's probably for the last 10 years, I've been preoccupied with autograph collecting, and that's definitely in my life the first time rules really came into play, where I self-imposed rules on myself because I saw the danger of just going nuts. The autograph collecting sort of pulls together every other hobby that I've ever had because, in a sense, I'm collecting from actors who've played in Star Wars and Star Trek, who've played superheroes in movies and television, even athletes, baseball players. So in a sense, that everything comes together in the autograph collecting because all the stuff I've enjoyed all my life, I can seek these people out and get their autograph, and it's like, it has some sort of connection to my childhood. I've gone to all the conventions and met people in person and got their autographs and paid for autographs.
How important is it for you to actually meet the person as opposed to just buy the autograph, assuming it's a legitimate, source?
Right. Well, first of all, I'm one of those people who prefers his autographs to be personalized. So they'll all so-and-so. So that in a sense, it's, there's a little bit of a personal touch right there. Even if it's through the mail, I want it. I just don't want their name. I want it written out to me, and usually like put your character's name on it, or put a quote from the movie or something, something that makes it unique to me. But I do like meeting them, and I've met many actors and people through conventions, and even through my job, my old job. I met quite a few that way. So it's nice to have that, as long as they're nice. And I've really never met anyone who's been exceedingly rude. I've met probably all the big Star Trek actors and a handful of Star Wars actors and some people from Lost and Firefly and Battlestar. So it's nice, and I'll be honest, I love taking a picture with them too. So that's very aspect of that collection, is getting a picture with them. But I'd say probably for the last 10 years, I've been doing this. Started through the mail, started really going to the conventions, and it's kind of, not that it's petered out, but I've kind of run it, not that it hasn't completely run its course, but I've certainly gone after all the people that I can go after from like my childhood and things like that. When Lost came out, that was something I had to jump all over. When Battlestar came out, when even Heroes, when that came out, those were all shows that I was like, okay, now I can collect these people, and that would kind of give the hobby a shot in the arm.
But when you focus on a specific show, for example, and you've gotten the key people, let's say, are you capable of moving on to something else and completely forgetting about this? Or then you kind of start, well, let's go to the second tier people, let's go to the third tier people. Do you move on from the individual collections?
Well, that really kind of speaks to like Star Wars and Star Trek and stuff like that. Like I really went after as many of the big, quote unquote, big people that I could, and with like Next Gen and stuff like that. But I would, for example, the original Star Trek series, and you're saying to yourself, these actors, they're not going to live forever, so you got to get them quickly, because I missed a few of them had already passed away. But then once I got the main cast, I was like, okay, well, let me go after the guest stars, as many guest stars as I could for Star Trek the original series. But then with Star Trek the Next Generation, I was like, it's just too many. I mean, I got the entire main cast, a lot of the supporting people that would come, like Q or Ensign Rowe, people like you'd see more than like 5 episodes of. But I wasn't going to go after people like just once. Even like a show like Battlestar, I went after definitely the main cast, probably the B cast, but then not the C cast. Like I didn't go after like the Doctor or some of the pilots. I couldn't even tell you some of their names. I definitely imposed a restriction. Star Wars. Go after the main cast. Go after the bounty hunters. Go after the Imperials. Go after the X-wing pilots. But then don't go after the 5 Jabba puppeteers and the guy who played a snowtrooper on Hoth.
Oh yeah.
So and they're all out there.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all out there to be gotten. And you just say to yourself, I really don't care.
And something like Star Wars, they also start to develop the crew. The crew then starts being something people chase after. Not just the director or the producer. You're talking about the assistant audio editor and the the Foley artists and the this.
I can see why people like with Star Wars. Obviously I don't have his autograph. I would love to get George Lucas's autograph, but speaking of like Irvin Kershner, who just passed away, I have his autograph. I can see why people would want to get like Ben Burtt's autograph. The big crew. Ralph McQuarrie, I could see why someone wants his autograph, but I haven't gone after those people. So, yeah, I definitely impose restrictions on myself. And, I've kind of held to that. But the hobby, every once in a while, it'll get sort of reinvigorated with maybe a movie will come out that I'll really be into, or another sci-fi show will come out. Surprising, like The Event, I don't care about The Event, so I really don't. I'm not going after those actors.
No, and also a lot of times when something that comes out that you really like, for whatever reason, sometimes they don't merchandise it a lot. So when there's no outlet for you to buy, whether it's an action figure or a novel or something, it's like, well, the only thing that's left is their individual autographs.
Yeah, and I like it, especially, I am a writer. That's what I do for a living. So I tend to write a pretty decent letter, and it's nice to get a personalized. Usually, I mean, I'd say at least half the time I'll get some kind of a little personalized response, which is also nice. It's like you feel like you had your moment with them, whether you met them in person or you got something nice back in the mail. So and I'll end it with what's behind me right now. Christmas ornaments, that definitely is really where I've kind of lost my mind. When I first got married, my wife started getting me ornaments, and as that would, it was her idea.
The hallmarks.
It was her idea to get me the hallmarks every year, a couple a year, and now my wife is very sort of, she's not gonna let these kind of ornaments on her tree, so she got me like a little Charlie Brown tree, and I had it in my office.
Like what's behind me right now.
Exactly, what you have behind you is your first. That was my first tree, and and again, I guess my wife at the time didn't know me well enough to realize what an addictive
Now,
personality I
what year
have.
is this? Because
This
the
is
Star Trek one started in '96, I believe.
No, they actually
92.
started in '91.
One. Woof.
First Enterprise, which is the only one I don't
Me
have.
too. Me
Original
too.
Enterprise. But what I did was, now I got married in 1998, so I had
Go
to
backwards.
go back,
Oh.
go on around at the time and buy them all. So I had to get everything. Now, granted, that wasn't so bad, but then every year since, I had to buy every Star Wars, every Star Trek, every superhero.
And there's no rules in this one?
It's just I buy the ships, I buy the, I don't think there's any that I haven't gotten, especially with Star Wars and Star Trek. And I get all the ships. Now they even started with Raiders of the Lost Ark. I've gotten all those. Yep. I've gotten, they even have a few Lord of the Rings. But you know what? I definitely, the ones the really tiny ones, I have some of those. Like I have the Max Rebo band, and I have some of the Ewoks. Yeah. Those are really small. I have some of those, but I don't think I have all of them. But if there's like 5 Luke Skywalkers, I have them all. Luke Jedi, Luke X-wing, Luke with Yoda on his back. I have all that stuff. Every Darth Vader.
Now, is there any end in sight, or at least any rules that you're going to start imposing on yourself, or you're in the full blown nuttiness here?
It's full nuttiness because it only comes around once a year. So, you get the catalog and you're like, oh, I want this, and this. And I remember when I put the tree together the other day, my wife was helping me, and she saw the bag of the hallmarks from this year.
And they're not cheap.
No. And she was like, this year I bought 16 of them. And she's like, don't you think that's a little excessive? And I was like, oh.
We better get a new tree.
Yeah. It's like I need another tree. So I don't know. I mean, I may have to impose some restrictions or have them imposed on me, but
wow.
I definitely, the tree, it's a normal sized tree, and all the ornament on the tree now. So you see where I have storage tubs filled with these things. So something's going to have to give. I keep hoping that, they'll kind of slow down, but they always come up with something new. Now the big thing with the hallmarks is scenes.
Yeah.
You have the Millennium Falcon blasting out of Mos Eisley, or you have Darth Vader talking to the Emperor, or the Enterprise fighting with the Reliant in Star Trek II. I mean, just individual scenes, and they're pretty cool. They light up and they have audio.
Somebody's buying them, so they're making them.
Yeah. So that is where I am at today.
Cool. All right. Well, for me, let me tell you about my current. I guess addiction is what we kind of seem to be leaning towards nowadays. One of the things I started collecting a couple years ago was the FX lightsabers, which are these hilt replicas where you can flick the switch and the blade lights up like a lightsaber. And again, it started out as I just wanted to get one for Kim. Because it seemed like an interesting little one-shot kind of gift. But then it was like, well, wouldn't it be cool to have the other one? And then, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 later is where I am right now. Now, luckily, these only come out about once a year, and it's either one, maybe 2 different ones per year. And a lot of times, if you're really, really into collecting these things, they make, for example, the Luke Star Wars lightsaber, and then they make the Luke Empire, or the Anakin, Episode 1, or I'm sorry, Anakin Episode 2, Anakin Episode 3. For my purposes, the rule that I set for myself is, if it looks the same, I don't need the second one. Mm-hmm. So, for example, Darth Vader has the same lightsaber every time. I don't need to have 3 different lightsabers that say Darth Vader, because they just changed the screw on one or the other one, and they call it something different. So that's how I kind of limit myself. Now, what's happened that's good, in a way it's good, is the fact that Master Replica lost the license, so they stopped making them.
Okay.
However, now Hasbro, I believe, picked up the license for this. So they're starting to make them. But again, luckily also they've They just started remaking old ones. So I'm like, good, I'm safe. I don't have to rebuy they can you can remove the blade now with them, do all kinds of weird stuff. It's like, no, I already have those. I already have a representation of those. I don't need to go crazy. So in a way, it's been kind of quiet lately with these lightsabers because, number one, I don't really have any more room for them. I already have set them up. I set them up in a way where there's just no more room, and you could see them. And plus, I also like to see the stuff I collect. In other words, I like to display it. I like to have it in front of me in a room where I could see them.
I don't blame you.
They started out in the living room, and they quickly ended up in the office. You can understand how that went.
Yeah, sure.
The other thing that I've started recollecting a number of years ago again is action figures, but I set up really, really strict rules for myself when it comes to action figures. The way that it started out really was with the Macquarie line. They made a couple of years ago a line of action figures based on Macquarie drawings. So I started collecting those because there was only Macquaries. But then I started collecting deleted scenes. So in other words, when they put out a figure that came from a deleted scene from one of the Star Wars films, I started picking those up. I also started picking up figures that have to do with cameos. Not so much a famous person, but if somebody who is kind of known for something else or somebody who's a behind-the-scenes type of person ends up making a cameo in Star Wars and they happen to make a figure out of that, boom, I'll pick that one up. And, just about any weird conceptual drawing type of inspired figure, I kind of stick to those too. And I pick up any odd, weird-looking figure that I might like here or there, which is not a lot. So that kind of keeps me somewhat grounded when it comes to figures. Every time they have Toy Fair and they announce like the next wave of, okay, here's the 30 new figures for the year, if there's one or two that I want, I'm happy. I like to keep it to that. I would love to keep it down to one or two a year. But, every now and then they sneak in. Just like you, I also collect those ornaments. And I did start back. When I started, it was on the second year. So I guess that must have been 92, which is the Galileo shuttlecraft. That's the first one I've got. And I've picked the rule that I set for myself when it comes to that is the electronic ship for Star Wars and Star Trek. I'm more like I ignore the secondary, the individual figure ornaments, the scenes like you mentioned before. Now, granted, I might get some of those as presents, or I might pick up one or two of them here or there when they do the 75% off sale the day after Christmas, when it's a madhouse everybody's grabbing. But in general, I stay away from those, and that's kind of what keeps it going for me. Luckily for me, I didn't have to go backwards, but I never did get that first Enterprise. However, they did release newer versions of the Enterprise in past years, which they're 10 times better looking, but obviously they're not that one. So, it's always kind of nagging at you. You're looking at the tree and like, there's one missing, and I know which one it is.
Yep. Damn it, and I'm never going to get it. Now, just maybe you should talk about, your parent and your son and I guess your daughter too, they share in collecting with you?
Well,
or,
I wouldn't call them collectors yet. They enjoy the hobbies. Toys, Star Wars and all this kind of stuff. Kyle and even Amanda to some extent, they're really into it. I gave Kyle all my figures, my original figures, and it was kind of like, and I know a lot of people. Not a lot of people. Some people were very upset at the fact that I did that because they couldn't understand the concept. They couldn't understand the concept of actually giving somebody something that is so personal, that you worked at so hard.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? I'm done. I got to move on to the next thing because there's always something there. And
something there, yeah.
I could imagine, what it would be like to a little kid to all of a sudden overnight have this box land on their lap with everything in it.
And
as a matter of fact, I did the same thing with all my Star Trek figures. I had something like one or two of those Rubbermaid containers full of every freaking figure that they came out with for all the Star Trek shows. And I said, here you go. They're yours now. If you want them, you can have them. And it was like, great.
Yeah.
But, the the DVDs are, I'm still picking up DVDs here or there. I'm still picking up all the, making of books. I still continue with those. But for me, it's a matter. It's never been an investment. Number one, it's never been an investment. So certain things I have to open because I want to see them. I want to actually see what's happening inside that box.
Touch them.
If I was still playing with figures, which I don't play with figures anymore, I would open them because that's what I did. When I play with them, I had to open them. The stuff I buy now, I keep it wrapped because I actually like, some of the stuff I buy now, I actually enjoy the packaging almost as much as the content.
Sure.
But there's always something there. For example, when I went to C5 this past summer, I picked up. I already had some just by coincidence or just by the fact that I picked them up because they were part of something I bought that included them. But I started picking up Star Wars patches, and I'm talking about the older, the original Star Wars fan club patches and cast and crew patches and stuff like that. So I'm currently in the midst of a little. A moderately small Star Wars patch collection that I started, and it's a cool little side hobby, and But the thing is that I find it. I don't know about you, but it's like you gotta have some kind of an outlet, and for me, and as I explained it to just different people, my wife and other people, it's kind of like it's just like a lot of things. When you have reality at work, outside, outside
yes.
in your home,
yes.
outside your home,
yes.
you need that little space to yourself. And the space to yourself includes these things that, obviously you don't want to disappear to that space to be completely, on your own, but you need that calm, I don't know if it's a returning to childhood type of thing, but it's there
Partially.
For a purpose that keeps you kind of sane. Do you find anything similar to that?
I absolutely agree, and I don't know if it's more of a guy thing, but all my life I've had these hobbies that just give me a certain amount of pleasure. Now, granted, we've talked about how you can let it get out of hand and how it can border on obsession, things like that, and I totally will cop to that. If mother or somebody's going to say that I'm taking these things a little too far at certain points in my life, sure, absolutely. But at the end of the day, it's time that's just me time. And again, I don't have kids, so my time is not as much at a premium as yours. But as long as I can get in maybe a half an hour or an hour a day where I'm just doing my own thing, and it's usually relating to a hobby where it's like if it's autographs, it's writing letters, getting the materials together, because then you get the payoff of the stuff coming back in the mail, or if it's watching a DVD that of a movie that you love, something. And it's not to say like you make a good point. It's not that I want to disappear. It's not that I don't want to, and we know that there are people in this world who do disappear into these worlds. But I put my foot in it and live in there for a little while, and then I'll come back and I'll be sort of re-energized, and whatever's bothering me doesn't feel as bad, and whatever work BS that I'm dealing with or family BS that I might have to deal with, that you have this little outlet that it's just yours.
I'll tell you another weird thing. I don't know if you ever experienced this, but with me, it's also this thing where it's kind of like any second now, this could all end. So if I know it's going to end tomorrow, I might say, well, you know what? Let me make sure I get this before it ends.
Well, that's one way to look at it. Given, but what you're saying is true. I mean, if you think about, I'm lucky, we're all lucky, the economy is bad, but we've had jobs and, we have houses and cars and, but people in my life have lost their jobs, and people who are like us who, have these hobbies and things like that. And all of a sudden everything is cut off. Everything is cut off. And you have to just worry about food, clothing, and shelter. And I can't imagine a world like that. I've been so lucky from just the time of living as a child with my parents up until now. And it's not to say that I should have probably been a little bit more careful at times with money and things, but it's like, wow, and if something that gave me pleasure 15 years ago is not doing it anymore, then I can sell it and and use it for something that is going to do it for me now. But yeah, I agree. I mean, life can turn on a dime, and but these things have all been some kind of a constant. I mean, I've been reading comic books since I was 4 years old. I've been watching and loving Star Wars since I was 7 years old.
I've kept up with autographs, not as extensive as yourself, but it's kind of when I used to go to conventions back in the '80s, it was kind of like a mild thing because it was free. You could get the autographs for free. And then in the '90s, when they started taking the sports model of charge per signature, that's when I kind of backed off all the way. And then I kind of started again, maybe, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, here or there, picking them up, that sort of thing. But it's one of these kind of things that comes and goes and comes and goes. And every now and then you do kind of like, well, this guy, you really admire, and he's getting up there, and it's like you want to have some kind of a memento of this person. And for me, my two big ones are, you mentioned before, Ralph McQuarrie. I was able to get his autograph, and Ray Harryhausen. Those are like the two big ones for me when it comes to the ones that are probably not going to be here long.
Yes. No, and that pushes you. It's like, oh my God, so and so's 85 years old. I better get him. Or even when they're in their 70s, it's like, okay, these are some people that I better make a point of getting because they're not going to live forever.
One thing I experienced, or I know somebody who experiences this, is that I want to make sure that I hope that people who collect, they actually take a joy in what they're doing. That it doesn't become, first of all, too much of a hassle to either have or hide their collection. Or people that don't want to share their collection. In other words, kind of like hoarders who kind of collect, but then they don't want to open it up for other people. Or people that are just so into it that
they have nothing else in their life.
That could happen too. Or people that they no longer take a pleasure out of the actual material they're collecting, but it's almost like an automatic thing that, well, I gotta collect it, and I gotta collect it, and I don't like it, but I have to collect. And that's when it starts to go in a different, complete direction. That it's kind of like, if you're no longer enjoying it, there's something wrong. There's
definitely. And I'll tell you, especially with the autograph collecting, there have been times. I mean, I'm definitely nowhere near as active as I was at my height, but I definitely, it comes and goes in waves. And when I see it becoming too much of a chore, getting the envelopes, printing out the labels, the stamps, putting in the return address, it's a whole process. So whenever I see myself getting annoyed by that process, I step back and I say, you know what? As long as nobody's dying anytime soon, these are people that can wait, and I'll give myself a break and maybe come back to it in 2 or 3 months, do it again, and then, and of course you get that payoff when they come back. So, it's definitely, I have come to that point where I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous. And of course, I doubt my boss is going to hear this or anybody at work. So, I used to do a lot of that at work. I do all my prep work for the autographs at work, doing the envelopes, writing the letters, because that's another big part of the process. And I don't want to do that stuff at home. My home time is at a premium. I'll do it at work.
I would say that my final thoughts on this subject would be that, obviously, other than what we talked about before, that it's something that keeps you sane. When things go completely wacko somewhere else, this kind of reins you back in a little bit. And for me, I think for the future, it serves two purposes. One of them is it would be great, now this is in my particular situation, like I did with my action figures, to one day, out of the blue, without having to be hounded about it, obviously, be able to say to somebody like my kids, okay, here you go, take all this, have fun with it. Because I love that feeling that one day you get something that you never expected. And it's a lot of stuff, not just one or two, but it's like 100 of whatever the hell it is you're talking about.
Right.
That's one thing.
Right.
And the other thing goes back to, like I said before, it's if tomorrow you get cut off and and you are completely isolated or you have no more access to any of this stuff, you have this huge library of whatever the hell it is, whether it's DVDs, toys, autographs, comics, books, magazines, whatever, that can keep you going it's like reserves. It can keep you going for a long time until hopefully you can come out of that hole and get back into it again.
Exactly. No, I agree completely.
All right. Well,
we worked out a lot of issues
this is
here.
Like once again, a quickie 15-minute show is turned into a two-parter, which is not bad because we're kind of running out of shows. Any last words, or you're cool?
Just to say that I'll probably keep doing this for as long as I possibly can. It's part of my personality.
Same here. All right. Well, thanks, Steve, for joining us once again, and thank you everybody for listening. And please join us next time on another episode of Geekfest Rants. Bye-bye.
If this is a consular ship, where is the ambassador? Thank you. Thank you so much.